Hey, Cypher here, and today I'm doing something a little bit out of the ordinary. I'm kind of doing an episode that's a preliminary chapter from my dissertation. Since my dissertation is going to be on violence in the Southwest, and I happen to be in New Mexico, of course, one of the chapters is going to have to focus on the Lincoln County War. And while this subject has been covered to death, I'm pretty sure I still have a unique viewpoint on it. So stick around for that. But before we get started, I also want to point out that today's episode was edited by a guest editor. So if you think that the quality of the video is a little bit better than normal, well, that's not my fault. So be sure to go check out his channel. He runs a channel called The 10,000. It focuses a bit on political and economic history. So be sure to go check him out, either right now or after the video. And tell him thanks for lightening my editing load.
In a dark room, two men sat talking. A younger man barged in saying, "Quien es?" Grabbing his revolver, Pat Garrett shot Billy the Kid before the kid could react, bringing to an end half a decade of unrest in Lincoln County. Historians often describe the historiography of the Civil War as having spilled more ink in the writing about the events than the men who participated in them spilled blood. If that is the case for the bloodiest war in American history, then the historiography of the Lincoln County War is so voluminous as to have multiplied the spillage of blood with ink many times over. The literature on Billy the Kid alone is a cottage industry somewhat begun by his killer, Pat Garrett. Billy the Kid is on par with Jesus for depictions in Hollywood. As historian Frank Prassel said, "Endless research on the story of this noted outlaw has only served to produce an enigma. Yet nearly all of these histories forget the greater context that characterizes the Lincoln County War. Unlike most depictions, it was not merely a rivalry between some merchants in the town of Lincoln, but the culmination of built-up tensions in the region during a series of conflicts beginning in the 1850s. Even the kid's final words express this deeper history. His first instinct was not to speak in English, despite being born in the eastern United States in the 1850s. Billy, whose name was Henry McCarty to begin with, moved to Silver City, New Mexico with his family and new father-in-law in 1874. Less than a decade later, he died speaking a language he hadn't known before coming to New Mexico. The territory's history affected him and anyone else who entered it. One historian began writing such an interpretation, but made some crucial mistakes that hinder his analysis. In the 1981 book, Mexicano Resistance in the Southwest, Robert Rosenbaum says, "Focusing on just the war overshadows ethnic conflicts that preceded and followed the legendary gunfights, and obscures the pattern of ethnic affiliation that underlay the famous battles." Rosenbaum makes some decidedly incorrect statements trying to implement such an interpretation, though. For instance, he calls the Flores-Daniel gang's murder spree in Southern California a political rebellion, which is just laughably wrong. Even his depiction of the Lincoln County War as a fight between friends and foes of the Hispanic population renders illegible the very real ambivalence these people showed, as though there were discrete sides with good guys and bad guys, which ultimately resorts to social banditry to mythologize rather than represent history. But as historian Robert Utley says, truly, the Lincoln County War was a war without heroes. Rosenbaum's book, while at times heinously flawed, makes a greater point. There was an ethnic change in southern New Mexico, and the war cemented it in place. When the United States annexed New Mexico in 1848, there was a dispute over the southern part of the territory. The Boundary Commission, sent to map it by both Mexico and the US, had three different definitions of the line. Mexico created a town called La Mesilla as basically a refugee camp for those fleeing back, but it was in the disputed area. Tensions flared in 1851 when both Mexico and the US stationed troops there. Somehow they never shot at each other for 3 years, when the Gadsden Purchase resolved the dispute. In Mexico, the treaty is known as the Treaty of La Mesilla because the US purchased the disputed land. Suffice it to say, there were some underlying tensions there, but it took years for them to blow up. Minor conflicts in southern New Mexico were already present by the time of the Civil War came. The southern portion voted to form Confederate Arizona, with Mesilla as its capital. When Texas invaded, they found a mostly compliant region in the south. Once they were defeated a year later, General Carleton imposed martial law to reconstruct New Mexico. This martial law was terribly implemented, and mostly used to harass Confederate sympathizers. The military also turned to stopping Indian depredations in the worst possible way. In the first use of total war during the Civil War, Kit Carson destroyed Navajo lands in the northwestern part of New Mexico, and sent them on a long walk to Bosque Redondo, creating Fort Sumner to keep them interned on the new model for the reservation system. All this went horribly wrong as Navajos died of starvation and exposure, so they signed the Treaty of Bosque Redondo, ending the Navajo Wars and creating the reservation they have today. Soon, Reconstruction reshaped New Mexico. It brought Republicans into power who began machinations to control the burgeoning trade in land holdings. They swindled people out of their land grants, gave favorable deals for friends to accrue wealth, and committed election fraud to stay in power. Helping all this along was the territorial system itself. The federal government appointed the governor of all territories, so while Republican presidents controlled the country, Republican governors controlled the territory. The spoils system played a crucial role in keeping loyalty to what the Las Cruces borderer called the Santa Fe Ring in 1872.
The Santa Fe Ring.
Just a few months before that, a clash between Mesilla Republicans and Democrats erupted in violence, killing 9 people. It was the first great burst of internecine violence in New Mexico directly rooted in all these changes in power. The United States began incorporating New Mexico through these changes, but the resistance to it was signified by the Mesilla Riot of 1871. People were armed for war with Indians, held grudges from the Civil War, split by support for the federal government, and worried about their property rights. The factions perfectly aligned with those interests, but the Democrats won the election there for Doña Ana County, so Republicans fled, many of whom ended up in Lincoln County. Before the Mesilla Riot, Republicans were quite worried about the growing Texan influence on southern New Mexico. You see, Texans were typically extremely conservative Democrats, while Republicans were the liberal and radical party of the day. So Republicans divided the enormous county of Doña Ana into 3. Ironically, they named the new counties after the thing the Texans hated the most: the Republicans who had just defeated them in war. That's why it's called Lincoln County, to spite Texans. The other county was Grant, on the other side of the territory, which is where Silver City was, and a boy named Henry McCarty grew up, later to be known as Billy the Kid. So you've got all this stuff swirling around Lincoln County. Republicans gaining power everywhere other than Doña Ana County, leading to rampant corruption, grudges from the Civil War still around, property rights of Hispanics being trampled, and everyone armed and ready to fight Indians. It was a recipe for disaster, and that disaster did not begin in 1878 with the Lincoln County War. No, that was part of a series of grudge matches dating back to just after the Mesilla Riot. The first of these was the Tularosa Ditch War. Much of New Mexico is on the old Spanish acequia system, where irrigation ditches are communally governed. But the American property rights system interfered with that old order. Newcomers dammed the Tularosa acequia, and Republicans protected the intrusion because they lended more capital to the territory. Much of these newcomers were Texans, but they ranked higher in consideration than old Spanish systems impeding capital. Late 19th century liberalism was very business-centric, so the Hispanics who relied on the acequia began raiding the irrigation systems that hindered their system that had been working for a decade and exchanging gunfire in the process, though only killing horses. The Texans sent for the army, who came down and got in a brief shootout with Hispanics, killing one of them. The army stopped the vigilantes by threatening to shoot into the town of Tularosa with a cannon. Republican ambivalence towards Texan settlers really showed later that year, when a group of brothers moved to Ruidoso. One of the brothers and a friend went into the town of Lincoln to party all night. They were drunk and shooting all over the place. Despite being disarmed once, they managed to find weapons again that night and kept going. Constable Martinez tried to disarm them again, and they shot him along with throwing a few slurs to make their motives quite clear. They ran, but a posse of mostly Hispanics gunned them down during their escape. Vowing revenge, the other Horrell brothers began killing Hispanics. A large posse couldn't catch them, despite a prolonged shootout and a deputy's murder. 10 dead total in the Horrell War, and it was purely ethnically motivated. These were already some pretty bad omens, but a new gang formed in the 1870s. One was led by John Kinney, and another broke off to be led by Jesse Evans. The boys, as they were known, rustled cattle and committed numerous murders before the Lincoln County War. They quickly learned that as long as they didn't kill soldiers, like they did in 1875 during a saloon fight in Las Cruces, and didn't target the Republican-aligned people in Lincoln County, they could avoid the scrutiny of the law. Some of these engaged as gunmen in the El Paso Salt War to fight against Hispanics trying to keep their land rights. They formed a kind of alliance with John Murphy, whose general store in Lincoln controlled much of the commerce coming through the county. As Murphy became sick with cancer in 1878, he let his partner, James Dolan, run much of the monopoly in Lincoln County, known as the House, simply because it was ran out of Murphy's house. They maintained direct ties with the Santa Fe Ring through loans and public commissions, even implicating Governor Axtell in much of the corruption. In effect, these gangs were the outlaws who the law supported. But rival factions came about when John Tunstall opened his own store. He partnered with a lawyer named Alexander McSween and the largest rancher in the area named John Chisum, all in an attempt to ward off the house's monopoly.
The Three Musketeers, eh?
It didn't take long for this rivalry to erupt in violence. McSween became the executor of a life insurance policy and refused to give the wealth owed to the house in accordance with that will. Sheriff Brady, who was basically a patsy for the house, because of a court order from the failed insurance policy, not only confiscated McSween's property, but the entire rival store, which was owned by Tunstall. Around this time, Tunstall recruited numerous gunmen of his own to face off against the house's gangs. The Regulators formed an opposition led by Dick Brewer, which included Billy the Kid under him. Tunstall had to keep going back and forth to Mesilla to deal with legal matters, so he'd bring some Regulators with him for protection. If something were to happen, things would get messy very quickly. Dolan had a warrant for Tunstall's arrest drawn up over McSween's wrongdoing, so several sheriff-deputized house gunmen met Tunstall on his way home. A shootout ensued, killing Tunstall in the process. The house claimed Tunstall resisted arrest, but the Regulators said otherwise. A justice of the peace was convinced by McSween to deputize the Regulators, who in turn went on a vendetta against house gunmen. The Regulators apprehended several of them and massacred 3 near Blackwater Creek. They killed another house gunman in Tularosa, while Jesse Evans was wounded and sent to federal jail. The House tried to turn to legal measures first. Governor Axtell rescinded the Regulators' deputization and removed the 2 lawmen in Lincoln willing to legalize the McSween faction. But the Regulators removed Dolan's lawmen another way. They jumped Sheriff Brady and his deputies within a month, killing 2. The Regulators went down to Blazer's Mill, one of the Texan ranches responsible for the earlier Ditch War. They found one of Tunstall's alleged murderers there, named Buckshot Roberts. He fortified himself in the mill and managed to kill Brewer before the Regulators killed him. By this time, half the surviving Regulators were wounded and severely beleaguered. They needed to regroup. So they went to the ranch that McSween held as part of the insurance policy. There, they made Frank McNabb the new leader. While hiding out, the House attacked the group, killing McNabb and leaving the Regulators in disarray. The following day, Regulators killed 4 house gunmen in the town of Lincoln. The regulators in the House took up positions in Lincoln, fortified themselves for the long haul, and began capturing one another as they went about their daily business, with only one House gunman killed over the course of a couple months. Tensions kept mounting as minor shots were fired through the town for months. Since the House had the backing of the Santa Fe Ring, they rebranded as the Law and Order Party, calling McSween's faction the Modocs as a derogatory name. House gunmen even took positions in a tower meant to protect the town from Indian raids called the Territorial. As these guys bristled to fight, the US Army sent the post surgeon from Fort Stanton to negotiate a dispute over the tower. That didn't work, and soon shooting erupted. 5 days of fighting in Lincoln tore the town apart. It became increasingly nasty, and by day 4, the US cavalry arrived to fight on the House's side. Soon the fighting was at McSween's house. Somebody set it on fire, and during their escape, the House killed McSween, virtually ending the Lincoln County War. But some troubles continued. The regulators had a few men left, and Billy the Kid brought some of them together to continue cattle rustling and robbing for years. They killed an Indian agent on the Mescalero Apache Reservation, which Billy was indicted for. Because of Governor Axtell's corrupt involvement in all this, and other corruptions as well, President Hayes appointed Lew Wallace in his stead. As an olive branch, Wallace pardoned all of Lincoln County fighters for the war, but since the Indian agent's murder was not part of that, he refused to pardon Billy. But Jesse Evans murdered again, and Billy witnessed it alongside his friend, Tom of Folliard. So Governor Wallace offered pardons for them to give testimony against Evans. Even after doing so, Billy was kept in the Lincoln County Jail, so he escaped in 1879. Wallace didn't pardon him, instead spending his time authoring a book called Ben-Hur. So Billy gathered up his gang once again. 8 months later, he killed again in a bar fight at Fort Sumner, which was now owned by the son of the largest landowner in New Mexico. A posse sent after him ended up with the leading deputy killed and the Kid's gang on the run. Pat Garrett led the effort to find the Kid again, and after a couple shootouts that killed 2 of Billy's associates, Garrett brought the gang to justice. Sentenced to execution, the Kid escaped in 1881, killing 2 of his jailers in the process. This is what made him famous. But Pat Garrett tracked him down and killed the Kid at Fort Sumner. The only thing left was to break up the Kinney gang, which was done by the Messiah Guard in 1883. That guard was led by Billy the Kid's lawyer, Albert Jennings Fountain. Fountain himself would be embroiled in further fighting related to political favor until his disappearance in 1896. The way all these things are connected is through the incorporation of New Mexico into the nation's capitalistic system. The Santa Fe Ring used their political influence to gobble up more territory for profit, while being reinforced by the territorial system. Not until 1912 would New Mexico be set free from these imperial ambitions by becoming a state at long last, just in time for another series of violent events involving the Mexican Revolution. While the events on the ground make for great movie fodder, the more mundane aspects of legal wrangling, monopoly granting, and political patronage were the real driving aspects. It's all interconnected. You can see the reverberations of previous conflicts, and those to come, in even the tiny details. For instance, William Reinerson was involved in most of these events and more. He killed Justice Slough in 1867, was present at the Messiah riot, shamelessly favored Dolan as territorial official, and later dealt with property involving the Fountain Fall feud before his death. These events are deeply entangled in the change from a more independent territory to incorporation into the national system by the Santa Fe Ring. Violence like the Lincoln County War is the manifestation of that change, and the violence continued long after these events.
King wants to say hi, apparently. Why are you being so annoying, huh? Here you go, good boy. Good boy. And before you go, be sure to go check out the 10,000s channel and thank him for editing this video. I'll see you all next time.